up in this edition of Southern Newsweek, a part-time museum archivist branches out to sell pizzas on his days off, social housing apartments in Dunedin undergo a makeover, and a steam-powered car from 120 years ago goes on display. Kia ora, good evening, I'm Melissa Barton. The Dunedin City Council has announced a proposal to rezone a significant amount of land for residential use. A short public consultation period began this week, but if adopted, the plan variation could encourage house building around the wider Dunedin area.
A proposed plan for change aimed at tackling the city's housing crisis.
And variation 2 allows for between 2,000 and 2,500 additional units, some through rezoning land, some of that through relaxing rules in the 2GP and allowing for greater density development in a wider range of suburban settings.
The Dunedin City Council announcing the opening of consultation on Variation 2, which, if adopted, could free up many hectares of greenfields areas across Greater Dunedin, impacting 30,000 properties.
We're reducing the minimum site size required per residential unit from 500 square metres to 400 square metres per residential unit. And perhaps the biggest change is we are enabling 2 units per 500 square metres. So most sections would be over that 500 square metre mark, and so now you could redevelop that site with a duplex.
Dr Johnson says the city has an acute need for more social housing, which is also being addressed in this proposal. Policy planner Nathan Stoker says the number of people coming to Dunedin over the next 5 years is set to increase the pressure on the housing market, saying Dunedin has experienced 30 years of growth during the past 5 years, particularly with 1 to 2 person households.
So that has a big impact on the type of housing that we need. So we undertook a survey, I think it was last year, on what kind of housing people wanted and what different kinds of households wanted in their housing.
Stoker says while people generally prefer a standalone house, semi-detached townhouses are more suited to 1 to 2 person households. Mayor Aaron Hawkins admits the consultation period for Plan Change Variation 2 is quite tight, but he's welcoming feedback from people as soon as practicable.
The window for submissions on Variation 2 is about a month, but I would implore anybody who's interested in the urban form of the city and the supply of housing in the city to get involved in the process and to make submissions.
Hawkins says the council would rather hear from people during the submission time period instead of people being dissatisfied after the fact. In Dunedin, the South Today.
An archivist working part-time at the Otago Museum has branched out to fill in some of his time off. He's bought a little food caravan and started up a lunchtime pizza business.
Gareth West has just started selling pizzas around Dunedin from this little food caravan he brought down from Tauranga and fitted out himself. Currently he's open only 3 days a week and lunchtimes only. This is because he's also busy archiving the Otago Museum's collection.
Yeah, well, my job is part-time as an archivist, so I've always thought that doing kind of 2 quite different things would be a good mix for me, and I'd enjoy the kind of contrast.
His pizzas are either vegetarian or vegan and made with fresh ingredients, with a vegan pepperoni style pizza proving to be the best seller. West says he limits the number of different types of pizza he makes to just half a dozen.
I only make about six pizzas and aim to kind of have one kind of special every so often, but yeah, quite a simple menu.
West enjoys not working too many hours behind a hot pizza oven and keeps his weekends free, with some friends on call for when he takes the caravan to cater at music concerts and similar events.
Well, I've got a few friends who have been helping me out lately, and yeah, potentially, especially when the bigger events start happening, yeah, I'll definitely get a few mates on board. Some of my friends can already stretch the pizza dough and stuff, so yeah, definitely once we get more of the event bigger events, but yeah, for sure.
The Slice of Heaven caravan is open on Wednesdays and Thursdays at the Otago Museum Reserve and on Fridays at Dunedin's Exchange. In Dunedin, the South Today.
It's full steam ahead for an exhibition opening in Alexandra this coming weekend. The exhibition includes a steam-powered locomobile dating back to 1901, which was the first car imported into Dunedin.
Central Stories Museum and Art Gallery in Alexandra gained a grand old lady last weekend, arriving not quite under her own steam, but transported from Dunedin by Central Stories manager Brian Budd.
This is a very special car, 1901 locomobile, which was the first car to arrive in Dunedin. It's a steam-driven car, but the unique thing about it is it does have a petrol tank, and the petrol tank, or the petrol fires the boiler that heats the water that makes the steam. So it was fairly unique sort of way of creating a fuel back in those days.
The locomobile is on loan during an exhibition opening this weekend that explores the early days of motoring.
The exhibition is called We Drove Here. It's an exhibition that was curated by the Hocken Library and paid for by the Otago Motoring Trust. The exhibition outlines the early history of motoring, more importantly the social side of motoring in the early days. There were no formed roads as we understand them today, so a lot of them were the old bullock tracks that they just started driving cars on, and that created huge problems getting from the coast into the hinterland. Journeys in those days were pretty long and rugged, and I suspect probably done over several days.
In Alexandra for the South Today.
A group of social housing apartments in central Dunedin have had a multi-million-dollar makeover, bringing them from the 1960s to the present day. Residents of the back group of the Maitland Street flats moved into the front building while the work was being done and are looking forward to moving into their new homes.
Taking social housing into the future.
So we're taking homes built in the 60s and making them up to the current standard in terms of insulation, ventilation and weather tightness. So this is a really good day, and we couldn't be happier to offer these homes to the tenants who were here previously. We moved them out, looked after them, and then we moved them back in, and they will see an enormous difference in the quality of the home and what it means for them in terms.
The Star Block apartments on Dunedin's Maitland Street were built in the 1960s, using the materials of the day. Paul Commons says the project is just one way the organisation is showing its commitment to the region. Jill Brown coordinates the tenancy managers for Kāinga Ora in the southern region and says the organisation houses some long-term tenants, some of whom found the idea of moving stressful, but are keen to move into their newly renovated apartments.
One of the tenants was walking around her unit and she was just going, this is amazing, oh my goodness, and she could hardly speak. She was so excited about having somewhere so lovely. I mean, it's a beautiful space, but also so warm, and she's super excited.
Dunedin's Cook Brothers won the tender for the $5.5 million project, and Blair Stewart says they're looking forward to getting into the next block, which he estimates will take about a year to complete.
There's quite a bit of asbestos removal and demolition up front, so yeah, that's probably take about 2 to 3 months, and then we'll actually get into the bulk of the construction work. So handover is December this year, so yeah, looking forward to it.
The tenants are due to move along the driveway from the front block and into one of the 14 new apartments in the coming weeks. In Dunedin, the South Today.
Still to come on this edition of Southern Newsweek, sport climbers get to try out a new indoor bouldering gym, and Southland farmers get to see how wetlands on private land can be preserved. So catch this and more after the break. Welcome back. Several hundred people, including car enthusiasts, mountain bikers and sightseers, attended the Coronet Peak Carnival. The day featured approximately 80 vehicles, including classic race and electric cars and motorbikes.
Queenstown's Coronet Peak is keen to prove itself as being not just a winter ski field, but also a summertime destination with mountain bikers and sightseers able to use the ski lifts to get to the top of the mountain. This summer's activities also included the field's first Car Day, showing off about 80 interesting and unique vehicles.
Anything from motorbikes to race cars to electric vehicles. We've even got an Airstream and some modified Land Rovers out there that are now camper vans, so just anything that people find interesting, bring it on up.
Coronet Peak Assistant Ski Area Manager Mark Somerville says a 100-metre slip and slide was provided as an activity for youngsters who could use the learner's ski area magic carpet to get back up the slope.
We've got a queue up there. I think there's about 60 people lapping it at the moment, and we've got the magic carpet running that we typically use in the winter for skiers to access the beginner slope, which is giving you that fast turnaround, so really good fun.
Somerville says the ski venue is hoping to grow its summer holiday clientele.
I can guarantee everyone that's been here will be sharing and spreading the word that Coronet Peak in the summer is a really cool destination. There's lots to do, lots to see. We've got parking directly outside the building, free Wi-Fi, lots of free kids activities out in our deck area, and a brilliant cafe for beers and wines and coffees.
In Queenstown, the South Today.
It seems the only way for sport climbers is up with the opening of an indoor bouldering gym in central Dunedin. Seeing a gap in the market, 3 friends have joined forces to open a dedicated indoor climbing facility with an opening date predicted around March.
The sky's the limit for a new climbing venture in central Dunedin.
Yeah, we've all been climbers for a long time and really enjoyed the sport, and as we've seen climbing sort of evolve around the world and see probably non-climbers getting more interested in coming to a facility like this, realised there might be an opportunity to sort of share our passion with Dunedin.
Climbing buddies Angus Kirk, Mike Simpson and Nathan Campbell are avid outdoor and indoor climbers and are set to open a new premises in Moray Place next month. Nathan Campbell outlines how their new venture came about.
We'd like to think it'll appeal to all sorts, kids, families. Climbing is a sport that anyone can really enjoy if they've got a bit of energy, and this facility is really designed for anyone. Certainly climbers will get a lot of joy out of it, but you don't need to be a climber to enjoy this facility.
For more than 20 years, Mike Simpson and Nathan Campbell have climbed crags throughout the South Island, from bouldering to alpine routes. At 25, Angus Kirk is the young blood of the trio and has been climbing for 10 years. He says he specifically came to Dunedin to open an indoor climbing space.
All 3 of us have been climbing for quite a while. I've been climbing for about 10 years, bounced around different climbing gyms and outdoor climbing, and you can't just base it off what everyone else is doing. You get a general feel of what sort of grade each climb should be.
The 3 co-owners have full-time employment outside of their new venture and say they're looking to recruit a full-time manager and several part-time casual staff. In Dunedin, the South Today.
Hundreds of swimmers braved the chilly waters of Lake Wanaka to take part in the annual Ruby Island swim. Some swam around the island once, covering a distance of 2.5 kilometres. Other options included a 10-kilometre circuit.
And they're off. Swimmers take to the water in one of the half-dozen categories of the annual Ruby Island swim in Lake Wanaka. Included amongst the day's events was a special 100 or 200 metre swim for intellectually disabled youngsters.
They've been gracious enough to give us their own category, which we've just done, so our kids got to swim their course, which is about 100 metres up the shoreline, and they get to come up the red carpet and have their photograph.
Local painter Stephen Martin Welsh says the Mint Swim was kindly added by organisers a few years ago so that intellectually disabled youngsters in the local region can take part.
Because that's what we strive to as part of a charity, is to get our kids involved and accepted, and they get everything that the other competitors get. They get their little Ruby Island gem photo in the local paper, and they They are exposed to the community sees them. It's all about inclusion, and we've turned the weather on here in fabulous Lake Wanaka.
Organisers say the weather was the best they could recall in the event's 7-year history, and the overall event attracted 450 swimmers. The most gruelling swim was a 10-kilometre course circling 4 times around Ruby Island, which the fastest achieved in just over 2 hours and 15 minutes. Profits from the event go to research duck itch dermatitis and lake snow algae. In Wanaka, the South Today.
Southland farmers have been given a tour of a farm, a third of which is an undeveloped swamp. The tour was organised as part of World Wetland Day.
This privately owned wetland is just over 60 hectares in size, and it's the equivalent of the amount of wetland areas Southland loses every 2 years due to farm expansion. QE2 Southland Regional Representative Jessie Bythell says wetlands should be preserved and not drained because of their high level of biodiversity.
So they're filled with a huge diversity of species. Wetlands are a sort of combination of both dry areas, terrestrial areas, and wet areas. So they are the melting pot or the combination of all the life that lives in those places. And humans, we don't always appreciate wetlands. Sometimes we just see them as a soggy paddock or a thing that isn't useful to us, and we've cleared a huge amount of wetlands. New Zealand's lost 90% of its wetlands.
This wetland is not far from Waituna Lagoon, and about 30 years ago the landowners Ron and Gay Munro protected the swamp in Manuka, which covers about a third of their farm, with a QE2 covenant.
So we work with landowners, they elect to protect things specially, and we partner up with them to give that legal protection. And the protection is forever, so it's a very serious commitment that landowners are making when they do this. It's amazing, it's really popular. We've been going for about 42 years from strength to strength.
Ours is a wee bit different in the respect, instead of fencing around the outside of it, we put these moats around it, which is just a strip of water about probably 8 metres wide, metre deep. And that was the same price as the materials of fencing and a lot easier to do. And it created more habitat for birds and kept the water level up, and so it was a win-win really.
The waters are home to endangered species of native fish and eel, and the trees and shrubs provide a refuge for endangered birds.
So the one that's special in the actual wetland where you've got the scrub and stuff is the fernbird, which again is a threatened species and not something we were particularly aware of when we did the protection. And I think that's the beauty of these covenant areas. It's amazing what turns up. Lots of things that do turn out to be on threatened species list because of the fact that so much of their habitat's been lost.
The Munros are pleased with what they've achieved, and this tour was for other wetland owners to see what can be done to protect swamps on private land across Southland. Near Invercargill, the South Today.
Still to come on this edition of Southern Newsweek, renovations of Dunedin's historic prison continue apace, and a freshwater spring in Wanaka gets a spring clean, so catch you after the break. Thanks for staying with us. Work on replacing the roof slate on Dunedin's historic prison is nearing completion. The new roof brings the 125-year-old building a step closer to being fully renovated.
Architectural conservator Guy Williams is pleased that the roof of Dunedin's historic prison has now been almost completely repaired, thanks to 20 pallets of high-quality Spanish slate sourced by Dunedin roofer John Megan.
It comes with a 100-year guarantee on it, which is amazing. And John Megan, who's our roof slater, put us onto it. So we're very fortunate in having really, really good quality, very, very hard slate. No impurities in it. John's doing all the work for us and doing an exquisite job.
Megan has worked on a number of roofs around Otago and says the variable weather was an issue when he started replacing the prison's roof last winter.
We've had snow, red hot days, freezing cold, wind, even on Friday. Got caught in that big rain shower Friday afternoon, got absolutely drenched. So in fact, the end of January, you didn't expect it to be 14 degrees and freezing cold.
Next on the cards is improving the frontage by restoring the iron fencing and stone pillars at the main entrance as seen in this drawing. Passers-by today can still make out the holes where the actual iron railings stood. Williams is hoping the Dunedin Prison Trust, which is funded by grants and donations, will continue restoring the building to a point where it can be used for commercial and public activities.
I'd love to see a big glass roof over the courtyard. It's a courtyard prison. You've got this amazing space inside the place that has got the potential for all sorts of things if it's enclosed.
Dunedin Prison, designed by John Campbell, was built in 1896 and retired in 2007. In Dunedin, the South Today.
There were tears in the eyes of the principal of James Hargis College in Invercargill at the start of the school year. The school's Year 9 pupils setting off on their step-up march between the junior and senior campuses.
Marching into the next phase of life, James Hargis College pupils on the annual Kahika Tia or Step-Up Walk, from the junior school to the senior campus.
It started when our schools merged, Collingwood and Rosedale and James Hargis. We use it to celebrate stepping up from the Year 7 and Year 8 into the Year 9, the senior part of their school.
Jeanette Chilton-Smith says the march is used to celebrate the stepping up from Year 8 into Year 9. And she says she loves doing it with the pupils every year. About 260 youngsters who attended the junior campus last year were accompanied on the 1.6 kilometre walk by bagpipers who attended the senior campus, as well as some Year 13 pupils.
And this ceremony this morning is an acknowledgement of them making that step up to that next stage into their schooling, and it's a really nice tradition that we've got going here. And last year, at the end of the year, we piped out our Year 13s on their last day as a bit of a coming round full circle of their finishing their time here at James Hargis.
As the pupils reached the senior campus gates, they were joined by 35 Year 9 pupils who were also beginning their school at JHC, but hadn't previously attended the junior campus. As pupils entered the assembly hall, they were greeted by the school's kapa haka group. In Invercargill, the South Today.
Wanaka is a town of freshwater springs and should be marketed as such. That's what some volunteers were saying as they cleaned up the stonework around a spring near the township's lakefront.
Volunteers did spring cleaning of an environmental kind in Wanaka, removing stones and debris from the freshwater spring on Lakeside Road. Organisers of the clean-up say every day hundreds of people collect their drinking water from the spring. The water feature is a popular stopping point for anyone walking between the children's playground and the marina. Tests have proven the water is safe to drink, but the natural spring is not classified as an official community water source. The stonework of the spring was funded and built by the community and local businesses almost a decade ago. The spring is just one of 200 or 300 springs around Wanaka, but most have now been built over by developments. Some of the volunteers say they would like to see Wanaka marketed as being a town of freshwater springs. In Wanaka, the South Today.
A touchstone which recognises the increasing diversity in the Southland community has been given to Invercargill City. The ILT commissioned the work from a local artist to celebrate the Trust's 75 years of operation in the city.
This beautiful stone sculpture has been unveiled at the ILT Stadium, Southland. It marks 75 years of the Invercargill Licensing Trust and is on display for all visitors to touch.
You know, the fact that it is argillite and it's obviously from Southland, many millions of years old, the first thing people want to do is touch it, including myself, because it's very tactile. I think people in Southland will love it for what it is.
Called Cena's Seed No. 1, the work is based on a Samoan legend and was carved by Samoan immigrant Johnny Peninsula. While health reasons kept the artist away from the unveiling, his son says the sculpture is about social inclusion.
This particular sculpture to me is a powerful representation of who my dad is and what he wants to see, imparted and implanted into the place that he loves and the place that he lives.
The artwork was actually created to go into the foyer of the ILT's new Langlands Hotel, which is currently under construction in central Invercargill.
That's a debatable point. That was the original plan, but I know Nigel and his team here will be wanting to keep it here. As I said today, the beauty of it being here is this is the most used facility in Invercargill, but the beauty of having it in the new hotel, possibly that all visitors to New Zealand and Southland will get to see how important it is and about Invercargill's story.
The sculpture is carved from a single piece of green argillite from Riverton. In Invercargill, the South Today.
And that wraps up this edition of Southern Newsweek. For the latest news from the Southern region, just head to odt.co.nz and have a lovely weekend. Ka kite anō.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.